Hi, welcome to another Lawn Fawn video. I'm Kara and today we're going to create some inky birthday wishes. I'll use Dandy Day stamp set and Offset Sayings Birthday, 2 frames from the stitched rectangle frame set in white, and the new Oliver's Stitched ABCs in white and in Sugarplum Cardstock. I'm starting with a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch panel of Bristol smooth cardstock. You could also use watercolor paper for this too. It's going to get kind of wet. I'm just smushing my inks over onto the side of my glass mat, spritzed a little water and moving it around with an old paintbrush. Now I'm just dipping my paper into that inky mess, and I'm using Wilted Violet, Picked Raspberry, and Faded Jeans. I let that dry, and now I'm coming back and I'm going to do it all again. Smushing the paper on the glass mat kind of gives it an overall blendy look, so I wanted to make sure the first layer was dry, and now coming in with a second layer of that. And pay no attention to that Chip Sapphire in the corner. We didn't use that one, but he got in the camera anyway. I don't know, photobomber, I guess. All right. I let that dry, and now I'm going to do the whole process again, but this time on a craft mat. And when I add water and dip my paper onto that, it's going to give a different effect. It's going to have more of the little individual spots that are going to show up. So it was nice to have that first layer of kind of a soft, smushy background, and now I can add the little texture over that. I let it dry, and this time I'm going to add liquid stardust to my ink and a little water and move that around, and I'll do the whole process again. I cannot emphasize enough to let it dry in between. Otherwise, it all kind of blends more together and you don't get the layers of texture. So, you know, in between, I did a load of laundry, I cleaned the bathroom, I took care of the dishes in this. No, I didn't do any of that. I went on and did a different card. Of course, I stayed in my craft room. Well, now that this layer is dry, I am taking just one color, the Faded Jeans, and put some liquid stardust and water on that, and then I'm going to flick this onto the panel with an old paintbrush. That liquid stardust does amazing things when it's added to ink, so at the end we'll see the reflection. Well, here it is with raspberry, picked raspberry as well. Oops, I wanted picked raspberry, so I cleaned off that brush, and now I'm just putting in some of the picked raspberry and some of the mixed ink as well. And my speckles were pretty small, so I decided just to smush some more onto the paper so that I could get some bigger individual colored speckles in there. So that is the nice thing about having it dry in between, because then you can see the true color come on as a layer on top. And there's our sparkle from the liquid stardust. All right, well, it's time to start stamping. And I'm using jet black ink, and this is Copic friendly, and I'll use some Copics today. Not a lot of coloring today, but we have our little mouse there from Dandy Day, and he's going to be blowing some birthday wishes. I moved the paper up a little bit so we could stamp some more of those dandelion seeds, and I have my panel here next to me so that I can look at the colors, and I decided to make the colors blue violets, so as my gray. So he has BV 31 and 01. I'm just finding the shadows here, and then I will put in some BV 02, and that's my darkest color. And so just adding that to those shadow areas, and then bringing it out a little bit onto his body with the BV 01, and then fully bringing it across his body with the BV 31. Because my background is so colorful, I wanted him to be a little more colorful too. So finishing up blending that through, and then I'm going to touch up the darkest areas, or the places I think have the most shadow, with my darkest one, the BV02, and then I'm going to give him some bright pink, actually it's a violet, VO4, in his ear and nose, and then blend that out a little with the BV31, and also blend out the white on his tummy and everywhere else as well. So now onto that dandelion stem, that's a G12, and then shading that with the BV01. I really wasn't trying to emphasize any green here. And then I added some to the seed area as well, and now I have the coordinating dies, and I'm going to place those on, and I'll put some low-tack tape over them so they stay in place, but I will run these through my die cut machine, and here they are all cut out, ready to go on the card. But first, it's time to assemble the word wishes. And so I'm going to put the white up and to the right of the Sugarplum cardstock. So I'm gluing that on the upper and right parts of the Sugarplum so that it's in the right spot. So now I'll have a shadow with the purple under the white, and I'm just going to make sure that each of my letters is about the same distance of a shadow underneath. So here they are now all glued down, and make sure that I spelled the word wishes right. That's always my fear. Did I spell this right? I know how to spell, but you know, when you're putting it out there, you feel like, I don't know, I second guess myself, but I know this is right. So now I can start assembling my card, and I have the largest stitched frame, rectangle frame, and I'm putting that on the panel, and that's a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch frame, so it works perfectly for the outside of the panel. And then I'm going to glue in a frame to create an inner border, and that frame is going to help me with the placement of my words. So I'm taking the offset sayings birthday, and I'm putting the word sending down, and I will add birthday. And because these are rectangle shapes, they fit perfectly together, and so I can know that they're straight across. And I'm going to put a lot of powder on here because although I let things dry, I wasn't sure if they were fully dry. So I used some clear ink and stamped that down, and now I'm going to use Lawnfawn's white embossing powder, and let's see how dry that is. Did I get I think I put a lot of powder on it, so it should be okay. But anything I don't have right, I just use a paintbrush and kind of brush around to get all the loose powder or the excess powder off before I heat it up. So now I melted it with my heat tool, and there were a couple little pieces of powder that melted where I didn't want them, so I took this craft pick and I'm just kind of scratching them off, and it worked just very well on this paper. So now for the bottom part of the sentiment, I want to say your way, and this is yay from that same stamp set, and so I'm using the AY and exclamation point, and now I'm using the W from the word wish, and I just laid the word over the AY to line it up and put a little powder on that, and I'll heat that. And now I'm going to put the R from birthday down, and that's going to be the R for the word your, and I'm lining that up again, and I'm masking everything off but that one R. So it's not hard to do. You just mask both sides and pull that off, put it on, make sure you have enough powder, stamp it down, and then I did not like where this ended up, and so all I did was wipe it all off. And I'm going to line it up differently this time to make sure that I have it the way I want. So what I did was put a piece of acetate in the corner of my MISTI, put down the R where I thought it should be, and then I'll pick that up with the MISTI, and I'm going to stamp this in black ink so that I can see it right on that acetate, and that way where it ends up, I can move my paper underneath to line it up where I want that R to be. And that's one way to line up. There's so many ways to line up your stamps, but this one is kind of a tried and true. And now I have it where I want, so make sure I have a lot of powder on there so that I don't have any of the clear ink from the last try, the last attempt on there, and then put my ink on there, stamped it down, and let's check to see how this goes. I just hope there's no residual ink from the first time, and no, it's pretty good. So I'll just take off whatever excess powder is on there with my paintbrush, and I'll heat that up with the heat tool and melt it, and we're on to cleaning that up because there was a little bit of residue, so it picked up some of the extra powder, but with this craft pick I can just kind of scratch that off, and it's ready for the word you. And this comes from the offset sayings birthday. The whole thing did. Everything came from that one stamp set, but I'm going to check it again with my acetate just to make sure I've got it lined up right. I worked this hard. I want to make sure everything's in the right place. And yes, it was in the right place. So I can take off the acetate, put on clear ink, and stamp it onto my paper, and put on the white embossing powder and melt that with my heat tool. And so our sentiment says, sending birthday wishes your way. All right, well, my paper was a little warped because of all the water that was on it, and so I ran it through my die cut machine without any dies just to flatten it out. But in order to make sure that it stayed flat on the card, I used some double-sided tape, and so it should stay straight and flat. And now I can decide where everything goes on the card, and I'm putting some foam tape on the backs of the letters so that they're raised up a bit. I want to arrange them in such a way that it looks like they're kind of blowing as the little dandelion seeds are blowing, and so just kind of figuring out where they are going on here, and then taking off the release paper and putting them down. And then for the little mouse, I want him blowing the seeds, but I want the stem behind him, and so I also want him standing on the words. So all those things together, decided we'll just clip off part of that stem and put it up a little so that he could be standing on those letters, and then I can move the dandelion up a little bit so it looks like he's blowing the seeds a little bit better and holding on to it. So a lot of little adjustments for one little guy. All right, well, I'm putting the seeds up into the sky and kind of putting them in the direction that I think they would be flowing if they were coming off this dandelion. And then I will just put some glue down with my glue tube and take the jewel picker to pick them up and put down the glue. And they're all glued down where I want them. And it's time for some final details for this card. So I'm putting down some faded jeans distress ink and a little water, and I'm going to take a small paintbrush and add that ink into the letters. I think that helps the sentiment stand out a little bit more. And once I have those all inked up, I'll come back with a paper towel and wipe it off of the embossing powder so it has a nice clean look between the blue and the white. Now, one last detail, I'm taking just a drop of liquid stardust and I'm adding it to the ends of the dandelion seeds, the fluffy areas, just to give it a little extra sparkle. And this card is all done. I hope you enjoyed this card today and that it gave you some new ideas for wishing someone a happy birthday. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye.